As someone who's been in and out of debt multiple times, but now actively maintains an 800 plus credit score, I can honestly say that credit plays a huge role in building a strong financial foundation. Having healthy credit habits can open the door for you to leverage credit to your advantage, whether that's buying assets, increasing your cash flow, or using it for investment purposes. If your credit score is not where you want it to be, don't fret. You can start implementing credit habits now that cultivate a strong financial foundation. And I want to help you do that. In this episode, I'm sharing 5 credit habits to build into your normal routine to form a strong financial foundation for yourself. And remember, if I can do it, anyone else can too. Hey there, I'm Raya Reeves, and over a decade ago, I turned my life around through budgeting. I went from being an overspender deep in credit card debt to being the founder and full-time money coach of City Girl Savings. Now, I help women work towards their dream life and tap into their financial power one budget at a time. I fully believe you can live a life you love with a budget, and I'm living proof. The weekly City Girl Savings podcast focuses on the intersection of money and the City Girl lifestyle. Join me every week along with some special guests as I share my experiences, advice, and guidance on navigating life and money as an experience-loving millennial. So, speaking if I can do it, I know I've talked about my debt-free journey on this podcast many times before, so I'm not going to go too deep here, but I do want to give you a quick overview of what my credit and debt situation was like. I had tens of thousands of dollars of debt. I was only making the minimum payment, and I took out way too many store cards in a short amount of time. And unfortunately, my score tanked, and it took me years to pay off the debt and get to a place where I actively maintain an 800 plus credit score. But it did happen. You can check out episode 15 of the City Girl Savings podcast for my full debt-free story, lessons learned, key takeaways, all of that. It's perfect for anyone who feels like they are drowning in debt and there's no way out. I promise you there is a way out. May not be overnight. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. It's going to take some work, some sacrifice, some discipline and time, but there is a way out. And once I paid my debt off, my score shot up as a result. And now I've maintained that high score for years, and certain habits have made that possible. So I want to share with you 5 credit habits to form to cultivate a strong financial foundation. So let's get into our first one, which is always paying your bills on time. And now notice how I said your bills. I didn't just say your debt payments. Always pay your bills. Any bill or payment or amount that you have due, just make it a priority to pay it on time. Don't pick and choose. Let's just establish the baseline that you're never going to have a late payment. Okay. Now, why is this the most critical habit? Well, because payment history makes up 35% of your credit score. It is the biggest factor of your credit score. So that's why always making sure you're never late on your payments is so critical, because it's looked at the most when it comes to calculating your credit score. When you consistently pay your bills on time, you're showing lenders, you're showing the credit bureaus, you're showing that you are reliable. And as I mentioned, it's not just about credit card bills. This would apply to your utilities, your rent, cell phone, and even small payments like subscriptions. All of these play a role. And you may be thinking, well, some of those bills aren't reported to the credit bureaus. No, they're not, but some of them are when you don't pay. Have you ever come across an old cell phone account on your credit report that's in collections because maybe you didn't pay a cell phone bill or maybe your rent, right? Or your utilities. Some of these things actually do go to your credit report if they're not paid, okay? So don't feel like it just has to be actual debt payments that play a role. Everything plays a role. And speaking of that, did you know that buy now, pay later plans like those offered by a firm are reported to the credit bureaus? Yeah. So if you like to take out a firm, Klarna, all of those things, make sure you're paying them on time or it can negatively impact your score. So, how do you make this habit easy? I would recommend setting up auto pay wherever you can. Automation has actually been a lifesaver for me, not just with paying bills, but saving, investing, making my life easier. And remember, even one missed payment can stay on your credit report for up to 7 years. So it's worth staying on top of this habit. Okay, I do want to add something. And before I share this tidbit does not give you permission to pay anything late. Okay, I just need you to know that this little piece of information is simply for awareness. You are only reported late to the credit bureaus after 30 days. So if your payment is due May 1st, as long as you make that payment by May 31st, you won't be reported late to the credit bureaus. However, late fees are usually charged instantly. Okay, so like the next day, you'll probably see a late fee charged to your account. So just because there is that little grace period before your late payment is reported, it's still best to pay on time. I just wanted you to know that information. Okay, let's move on to the next credit habit to cultivate a strong financial foundation, and it is to pay more than the minimum on your debt payments. So when I was deep in debt, I used to think, well, as long as I make the minimum payment, I'm doing okay. And while that's true, as long as I was paying on time and at least paying what I was supposed to, I would be okay. But here's the thing. The minimum payment is designed to keep you in debt for as long as possible. The minimum payment usually only covers a portion of interest and fees. And this means you're not even tackling the principal, which is what interest is charged on, right? So let's think about this. If you look at your credit card statement and you saw that you were charged $200 in interest, but your minimum payment is only $125, well, you're not even paying that full interest charge off, which is being added to your principal balance and therefore more that you will owe in the future. I can go off on a tangent on how predatory it is. I'm not going to do that. I think the point here is to always pay more than the minimum. By paying extra, even if it's just $20 or $50 more than the minimum, you can reduce the overall interest you pay over the course of that debt and clear your balances faster. It's a small shift that has a huge impact. So, for example, when I was focused on paying off my credit card debt, I would allocate any extra cash, whether it was a bonus, some side hustle income, or just leftover money from my budget. I would put that towards my highest interest card. Okay. It wasn't easy, but seeing those balances shrink faster really helped keep me motivated. I think another strategy I tried was the Snowball Method, where you put everything extra to the lowest balance debt. I think Avalanche is where you put it on the highest interest debt. I actually did both because I was in debt multiple times. So I tried both strategies. I would say the strategy of putting extra towards the smallest balance is my favorite. I lean towards that with clients because paying that debt off faster, it's the lowest balance. So of course it's going to go the fastest. Really gives you that motivation to keep going. When you see that balance or that card just get paid off, it's like, okay, yes, I see something for the efforts I'm doing. So just to quickly walk you through the Snowball Method, if you have an extra $150 a month to put towards your debt, instead of putting like $50 extra towards 3 cards, send that full extra $150 a month to your lowest balance card. get that card paid off, and then transition to the next. Now, lastly, if you don't have any room in your budget to send anything extra to debt, you have two goals. First is to find ways to bring in more money so that you can send extra to debt. And the second goal would be to get rid of any expenses or spending areas that you don't really need. It's temporary, right? This is not a permanent solution. It's not a permanent state of your life. But the goal is we want to find ways to send extra money to debt. So you can work on bringing in more money, or you can work on spending less money and send that extra to debt. This is the only way to get yourself out of the hole. If you are only paying the minimums, nothing is changing, unfortunately. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true, and you need to know that. So we got to find ways to pay the debt off faster.
Are you loving this episode so far? Well, the money and life level up conversations never end in the City Girl Savings community. Visit citygirlsavings.com for instant access to resources that help you budget, level up your money mindset, and so much more. And make sure you stay up to date with CGS by following us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at City Girl Savings.
Okay, moving on to the next credit habit to form, having a budget so you avoid sending too much money to debt. Now, this habit might surprise you, but should it? Because, how much I talk about budgeting, you should know that having a budget is critical for all areas of your finances, but it's especially critical for building your credit, paying off your debt. You can cultivate a strong financial foundation by creating and sticking to a budget, not just for your spending, but for managing your debt. Now, I've seen it so many times. People come to me and they're like, I can't get out of debt, but I'm living paycheck to paycheck and I feel like I don't have money to put towards debt. And what they're doing is anytime they get paid, after they pay their bills, they're sending everything to debt. And I'm like, wait, hold on. We still got gas. We still got groceries. You probably have plans. Like, we actually need some of that money to make sure you can live your life before your next paycheck hits. If you send it all to debt, you're going to be strapped and you're probably going to need to use a card to get by. So this is where having a budget is so important, because your budget helps you allocate your money wisely. You can make sure that you are allocating your income to paying down your debt, to covering your bills, but also to living life, right? So whether that's putting a little bit in savings or making sure you have some room to enjoy yourself with, this is important. If you deprive yourself completely, it's so easy to fall back into bad habits. Now, personally, I review my budget every month to make sure I'm on track. But when I was focused on building my credit, I reviewed my numbers every single paycheck. And having this structure really helped me to avoid overextending myself while I was still making progress with paying down my debt. So you want to make sure that you have a budget set, know what you can afford to put towards debt, on top of the minimum payments, and stick to that. If you get too excited, you send everything extra to debt, it's going to lead to you not having enough to cover things that come up. And it's also going to make you feel like you're not making any progress. Okay, the next habit to form is to look at your credit report once a year at minimum. Okay, so this next habit is important. Your credit report is like a report card for your financial health, and errors can cost you. So reviewing your credit report helps you spot any signs of fraud, spot accounts you didn't open, spot payments that are reported late, but they shouldn't be. And I need you to understand that reviewing your credit report is not the same thing as looking at your credit score. Okay, sure. Credit Karma, Experian, FICO, they may give you overviews of your credit score and why your score is what it is, but that's not actually the same as looking at your physical credit report. So as consumers, there are financial laws in place to protect us, and we are entitled to one free credit report pull from each of the 3 bureaus once a year. So the credit bureaus are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And you can pull that without having to pay anything, without having to sign up for anything at annualcreditreport.com. This is the only place where you can do so without getting yourself into a subscription. Okay, so this is one thing that I make sure my clients do every time we get started. Go to annualcreditreport.com, pull your credit reports from each of the three bureaus. Now, after COVID, annualcreditreport.com allowed people to pull their credit reports weekly. And I think it may still be that way. I'm not sure, but at minimum once a year, like this is a must do. So make it a point to pull your credit reports, check for errors, and dispute anything that doesn't look right. Okay. And as you're reviewing your credit report, depending on how many credit accounts you have, it may be lengthy, right? Don't let the size of the document overwhelm you. Just focus on anything that could be impacting your score negatively. So look for collection accounts, whether they're valid or not. Make sure you know they're there. Look for any late payments. Look for charged off accounts. These are the types of debts or things that are reported that will negatively impact your score. So we want to focus on these areas and get them remedied as soon as possible. You know, if you don't look at your credit report, you may be thinking that all is fine and dandy with your debts, but you may find an old cell phone bill that went to collections. So it's worth looking at your credit report to confirm you know everything that is being reported about you and your credit history. If you find something that's incorrect, you can reach out to the lender to update the reported information, or you can dispute it directly with the credit bureaus. It's a simple process that can be done online. So it doesn't have to be hard to fix something that shouldn't be there. Okay, let's talk about no balance cards for a second. These are cards that you've paid off and don't carry a balance on. Okay, so keeping these accounts open and active is an excellent habit for building a strong credit foundation. Okay, your credit utilization, which is basically how much of your available credit you're actually using, makes up 30% of your credit score. So payment history is at the top with 35%, but utilization is right behind it with 30%. So keeping these no balance cards open, so basically cards that have been paid off and don't have a balance, you don't really use them, keeping these accounts open will help you lower your overall utilization, which boosts your score. And not only that, closing credit accounts actually negatively impacts your length of credit history, which makes up 10% of your score. So it's not as impactful, but it's still important. The longer your accounts stay open and active, the more length of credit history you actually have. So I like to strategically use these cards for one-off expenses. So they stay active, but they're not racking up debt. And then I make sure I pay them off in full each month. So it's an easy way to maintain like a healthy credit mix while showing consistent and responsible usage. Also, if you have cards that provide rewards, you can strategically spend your money on those cards to get the rewards or the cash back. And this is something I'd recommend you do after becoming debt-free, though. If you are using cards for rewards, but you're carrying balances and you're paying interest, it's not worth it. Okay, so we talked about the credit habits to build to form a strong financial foundation. I just really quickly want to touch on some of the benefits of having good credit. I kind of touched on this in the intro, but I want to go a little bit further here. So one of the first and major benefits to good credit is access to lower interest rates. And I think this is probably the most important, actually. Whether you are applying for a mortgage, a car loan, or even a credit card, a higher credit score signals to lenders that you are a low-risk borrower. And this means that they are more likely to offer you lower rates and higher credit limits, which can save you thousands of dollars over the life of the loan or the debt. So, for example, let's take a mortgage. Someone with excellent credit might get a mortgage interest rate of 5%, while someone with fair credit may pay 7% or more. Over 30 years, that difference can add up to tens of thousands of dollars in interest savings. Another benefit of good credit is better approval odds for loans and credit. So, not only does good credit get you better rates, it also improves your chances of actually being approved for loans and credit cards in the first place. Lenders are more willing to work with borrowers who actually have a history of responsible credit management. And this will come in handy when you're applying for an apartment, when you're starting a business, or even when you're signing up for utilities. Many companies run a credit check as part of the approval process, and a high score can make these experiences a little bit smoother and less stressful. And the final benefit of good credit is just more opportunities to leverage credit for growth. Good credit opens the door for you to use credit strategically to build wealth. And with a strong financial foundation, you can leverage credit to buy income generating assets such as rental properties or investments. That's exactly what I did with my Palm Springs place. You might also use credit to start a business or consolidate debt at a lower rate, or even 0% for a certain amount of time. And this gives you more cash flow to reinvest in your goals. So when used wisely, good credit becomes a tool to create opportunities and really build long-term financial success. So I've had a low credit score, I've been deep in debt, and I've struggled with controlling my spending. And if I can overcome those things and end up with an 800 plus credit score that I actively manage, you can too. Start by implementing one habit at a time and watch the magic happen. And if you need help with creating a budget, setting up a debt repayment plan, or controlling your impulse spending, request a call with me and let's discuss. I will link to it in the show notes.
Thank you so much for letting me be the money coach in your ear today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the City Girl Savings Podcast and you feel empowered and motivated to take the next step in the journey to your dream life. Remember, if someone like me, a millennial who loves to travel, new experiences, and iced coffees can live a life they love on a budget, you can too.